Hello and welcome to another episode of the Conservationists Assembled podcast, headquarters for the world's mightiest conservation heroes. Each week, the podcast hosts an animal advocate or environment enthusiast to discuss all things surrounding a particular species or habitat. I am your host, Johnny Bloxham, and we have an amazing episode in store for you all. Today's episode takes us all the way to Vietnam. Please welcome to the podcast as we discuss all things Asiatic black bear, Charlie Paul. Hello, Charlie. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us here today. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Great. And we are obviously here today to discuss all things Asiatic black bears. Obviously, in our back and forth, we have discussed that probably if we were to put money on it, we would agree that they are the least well represented species of bear. And so we're here to try and get them a bit more awareness. So first and foremost, then, can you please tell us a little bit about Asiatic black bears?
Yeah, so obviously, as the name suggests, they are one of the bear species that are found in Asia. They have a huge range. They're found in 18 countries across Asia, as far west as Iran, kind of following the Himalayan foothills, and as far east as Japan. And they're found as far north as Russia, and then as far south as Southeast Asia in countries like Vietnam and Cambodia and Thailand. But sadly, despite obviously having a vast range, their population sizes are very small. They're fragmented, and they're kind of dotted around areas. Really, they're not kind of linked up across Asia, and that's where a lot of their vulnerability lies. So they are classified as vulnerable by the IUCN. Their major threats are commercial hunting for bear parts and also for live bears to go into the bear bile industry. But also they can be caught as bycatch by poachers. Obviously snares will catch anything that walks through them. Obviously habitat loss is a big problem. As I mentioned, small population sizes do threaten the bears because there is a massive loss of genetic diversity, and also persecution from bear-human conflict. And I live and work in Vietnam, and there are very few Asiatic black bears left in the wild here. There's not been much research done, but a study in 2016 basically suggested that there are no more kind of population strongholds in the country anymore. But yeah, so the Asiatic black bear is probably most famous for that kind of white V shape on their chest, and that gives them their colloquial name of the moon bear. There's different subspecies across Asia, but the subspecies that's found in Vietnam, the males tend to be between 120 to 140 kilograms. Females are a bit smaller at 80, 100 kilograms. They're opportunistic feeders. They'll eat mostly vegetation matter, but they'll also help themselves to honey, eggs, insects, seeds, carrion. They will hunt live prey themselves as well, if the opportunity arises. And their diet is very seasonal. Seasonally dependent. Again, each subspecies is different, and obviously the climate across Asia varies greatly. But in Vietnam, the breeding season tends to be between May and August, and the cubs are usually born January, February time, and the sows will give birth to between 1 and 4 cubs.
Amazing. So obviously a lot of information there, and we are going to talk mainly about the bear bile trade today, but you obviously have introduced a lot of other threats. And the reason why we're going to be talking about the bear bile trade is because you are part of the Four Paws organisation, and you are working at the Ninh Binh sanctuary. So could you please tell us a little bit about the sanctuary itself and Four Paws as an organisation and how they began?
Yep. So Four Paws is a leading global animal welfare organization that basically aims to improve welfare for all animals that are in direct influence by humans. So we work with domestic species, livestock, and wild animals. We have 13 wild animal sanctuaries across the world. One in Vietnam, which is where I work, at Bear Sanctuary Ninh Binh. We started construction in 2016, and we welcomed our first 3 bears, Nino, Taizang, and Tyvan, in November 2017. And since then, The sanctuary's grown rapidly. It's really been quite amazing in 5 years how much has been achieved. We now have 3 bear houses, and we currently have 46 Asiatic black bears on site. The majority rescued from the bear bile industry, and then a handful which were confiscated as cubs from the illegal wildlife trade.
Amazing. So, and obviously we're presuming that that is only going to keep happening for us and keep expanding and growing for as long as the bear bile trade exists.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully there is light at the end of the tunnel now in Vietnam. In 2005, the government here really wanted to crack down and end the bear bile industry in the country. So back in 2005, there were an estimated 4,300 bears on bile farms across the country. And the last count is now 250.
Wow.
So massive improvements. We really are kind of just waiting for those last few bears to be taken to sanctuaries. And that's from a lot of work from, obviously, we're in a coalition with the ENV, which is the Education for Nature Vietnam, and also with World Animal Protection. So these guys are the kind of guys who go out to the bear bile farms and will basically try and persuade the farmers to voluntarily hand over their bears to sanctuaries. And obviously, we're not the only NGO working out here. There is also the Animals Asia Foundation and Free the Bears as well, who both have sanctuaries in Vietnam. So between us, hopefully, the goal is that by 2025, there will be no longer any bears in Vietnam on bile farms.
That's awesome. And what kind of then presumably obviously talking about how the great work of reducing the amount of bears in bear bile farms has occurred. Are there any kind of concerns for capacity? Obviously, you've mentioned there are multiple sites and multiple other NGOs, but I'm assuming that there are concerns that, there isn't a capacity for all of these bears.
Well, actually, Animals Asia Foundation are currently constructing their second sanctuary in Vietnam, which will hold a great number of bears. I'm not sure exactly on the exact number, which they're hoping for. And we are currently building our extension to our sanctuary. We're going to be building another 3 bear houses, basically within our sanctuary on the grounds. So we'll be greatly increasing our capacities to hold more bears as well. So we're hoping that between all three of us, we can kind of take in those last few bears.
Fantastic. And obviously have already discussed that there is a dwindling population of wild Asiatic black bears. Are there any potential for any of your bears to be released into the wild? Obviously, it would be a long process if that was the case, but is there any, or potential for that to help boost those numbers again?
Definitely not for the bears that have been in the bile farms. They well, for a start, their health conditions are too great. They're not healthy candidates to go back to the wild, and the majority of these bears are old bears. So they've spent maybe 2 decades in a bile cage, so they're not ever going to be candidates for release. There could be potential, obviously, for confiscated bear cubs, depending on how long they were in human captivity before coming to a sanctuary. We're not set up currently for a release program, but that is something that I think NGOs are looking at in the future. So there are plans maybe for that in the future, but currently none of our guys would be candidates.
Amazing. That is just being talked about, as certainly it needs to be. So we've talked about how the Four Paws' big kind of goal is to improve standards of welfare. Are there any government aid being provided to Four Paws to help with their high standards of welfare, not just in Asiatic black bears, but just across the whole organisation?
We actually rely completely on donations for our work. And we have obviously a huge global network of supporters, which we're really grateful to have. And yeah, we don't have financial aid from the governments, but we do work closely with government officials and authorities to try and kind of push forward kind of what we would like. So, for example, we're helping the Vietnamese government end the bear bile kind of trade, because being here as a sanctuary means that the Vietnamese authorities can enforce the prohibition laws, and that there is somewhere that they can send confiscated bears or bears that have been voluntarily handed over to them because obviously without us, they wouldn't have a space for the bears. And without them, we need these guys on the ground, kind of keeping an eye on the bear farms and trying to persuade the farmers to hand them over.
And that is incredible in itself, isn't it? Because there is, while financial backing is incredibly important, it is also equally as important to have that government aid.
Let me just get rid of him. Tommy, hold your up.
Who was your guest?
Yeah, he's been outside. He won't come in. I know he's going to come in halfway through this and start talking.
Oh, well, he was more than welcome on the podcast. So then we've talked about how many bears are coming into your sanctuary. Could you just walk us through what kind of steps are taken by the sanctuary and Four Paws when lobbying for Asiatic black bears to be released by the bear bar farmers and into your care?
Yeah, so there's two ways that a bear can come to the sanctuary. So basically in 2005, the Vietnamese government obviously wanted to get a handle on the bile trade. They wanted to get some control over the bear farms. So they microchipped all the bears that were already in farms in 2005. And they said that these bears were legally kept bears. So if we wanted to have those bears, that the owner would have to cooperate and voluntarily hand them over to us. And that's where people like the ENV, WAP, and the authorities, the forestry department, do a lot of good work trying to persuade the farmers to hand the bears over to sanctuaries. The alternate is that basically any bear without a microchip, aka any bear caught after 2005, is an illegal bear and can be confiscated immediately by the authorities. So that's how the two pathways that the bear can come to the sanctuary.
And that post 2005 method then sounds very kind of productive in terms of enforcing and getting that ball rolling then.
Yeah, I think because it has done so well, and obviously there are so few bears now left on bile farms in the country. It kind of just shows that the method that the Vietnamese authorities went about into trying to bring this has been successful. In all the countries in Asia, Vietnam is definitely leading the way in ending the trade.
That is truly amazing to hear. And how can then everybody get involved with Four Paws' mission and vision, even if they aren't directly involved with working for Four Paws or, us here in the UK? How can we help, for example?
Yeah, well, we have obviously a website, so you can go and see all the different work that Four Paws does. As I said, we are international. We work in many countries with many species. Name a few, like the dog and cat meat trade, puppy farming, looking after horses in Jordan. We rescue bears across Europe. We have big cat sanctuary in South Africa. Like, we really are a massive organization. So I think it'd be really interesting for people to go on the website and learn about our work and the different things that we do. Obviously, people can always make a donation through the website. And we also have a lot of petitions on there that people can sign to help us try and push through policy changes. So at the moment, we have one out calling for an end to bear bile in Hanoi. So that would be really helpful if people wanted to sign that.
And Hanoi is the Vietnamese capital.
Mm-hmm.
So certainly by getting the capital under belt, we'd assume that maybe the rest of the country would be quick to follow.
Actually, it's more, I think, the idea that basically the majority of bile farms are in Hanoi. So the majority of the remaining bears are in Hanoi province. So that's kind of, if we could end it there, then we really are literally at the finish line.
Oh, amazing. Well, I'll certainly be dropping a link to the petition and the website associated with this episode. And we've touched on public donations, and what kind of work and resources do public donations help fund? Is there kind of a value that you could tie just to kind of encourage people to understand where their donations are going?
I don't have exact values, and everything is in Vietnamese dong here, so I couldn't tell you in British pounds what that would be anyway. Sure. But obviously we are expanding our sanctuary at a rapid rate. Obviously in 5 years, we've gone from nothing to 3 bear houses, which can hold 46 bears. And we're hoping that by the end of this year, we'll have another 3 bear houses. But obviously, building and construction costs a lot of work. As you can imagine, our bears are constantly breaking everything. So we have a very good maintenance team that everything the bears destroy, they have to rebuild. That all costs money. Feeding bears, as again, anyone who's ever worked with a bear knows they are never full. So we've got big food bills, and sadly, we have large medical bills. The majority of our bears are former bile bears. They have long-term health conditions ranging from heart disease, hypertension, osteoarthrosis, and obviously all the pain management medication that comes with those as well. So our medical bill is very, very high. And obviously we have to pay all the staff that look after the bears as well. And we have a really strong team of bear caretakers, which kind of work tirelessly night and day in 50-degree heat, work late, come early. So a really great team supporting the bears. So yeah, that's where all your money goes basically, is to make sure that these guys get the best of everything, because they really do deserve it. After you see where they've come from and what they've gone through, like, these guys deserve everything.
Yeah, it sounds absolutely crucial, and obviously coming from an ex situ conservation organisation myself, yeah, it is crucial to have public donations and funding, as obviously, as much as we don't like to admit it, money does make the world go round. And yeah, I mean, I think hopefully a lot of the people listening to this podcast can agree that it is money well spent. So I think you've given us a great insight into Asiatic black bears and Four Paws as an organisation and threats surrounding them. So we are going to move on now to talk about you for a little bit and kind of how you got to where you are in your career, because there are a lot of animal advocates out there. It is an industry that is very sought after in terms of people trying to come through and get a foot in the door. And we'd like to try and just pay it forward and obviously create a community to inspire these people that they're not alone, and after a bit of hard work it can happen. So yeah, how did you get to where you are, and kind of what is your background?
I've had I think a very kind of convoluted path, I feel, to getting here. I've always, obviously, I'm sure everybody in our industry says exactly the same thing. From a very young age, I knew I was going to work with animals. I think my parents thought this would fizzle out as I got older, but it didn't. I studied zoology at the University of Sheffield. Whilst I was at uni, I realised I needed to maybe start getting some work experience. Before that, I'd always had paid employment as a horse riding instructor, but I thought that wasn't going to be my long-term career, so I should go and try and find out what it was going to be exactly. So I did my first internship for just 3 months over the summer holidays at Chester Zoo when I was 21, between the end of my bachelor's and my master's year. And I think after that 3 months, I kind of was like, I think zookeeping might be what I want to do. And that was on the giraffe team, and I really enjoyed that. After uni, I then obviously had that 6-month panic that nobody was employing me. I was sending CVs out and cover letters like to everybody. And fortunately, I got my first paid position as a seasonal animal ranger at Yorkshire Wildlife Park. And then from there, I kind of just seemed to have just moved all over the country, doing different positions, different jobs. I was convinced I was going to be a hoofstock keeper, but then I was offered a position. I was actually offered just a zookeeper position at Drusilla's Park, and I kind of went in not knowing what species they were going to give me. And on my first day, they're like, "You're going to work with penguins." I was like, "Oh, okay." didn't think penguins. I've been working with giraffe and rhino all this time. Completely fell in love with the penguins. They're an amazing species. Like, I finally understood why everybody's so obsessed with penguins. And then from there, I went on to specialise in primates for 5 years at Howlett's Wild Animal Park and Monkey World. And then I kind of just always had this kind of desire to go and work abroad in situ. And it was a big gamble because I was really enjoying my position at Monkey World at the time. And I really loved the work that I was doing, rescuing the monkeys. I was on the small monkey team, so rescuing the marmosets from the pet trade in Britain. But I had to roll the dice, and I was like, no, come on, it's now or never. And I applied for this job, and luckily got it. And yeah, now I work with bears in Vietnam.
Incredible. But that is this industry in a nutshell, isn't it? You don't always know what you want to work with, and there is something to be said about not specializing too soon. So yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like you've landed on your feet, and you're a part of a really big cog in a bigger machine.
Yeah, I think it's really I'm really glad that I didn't stick to one kind of taxa. I'm glad that I've had the variety. And I've worked in like zoos, I've worked in rescue centres. They're very, very different kind of management styles in terms of the animals, because obviously a lot of the time in rescue centres you're rescuing animals that don't behave as a normal animal should. They've usually got much more considerable health conditions, and you're kind of getting new animals in all the time and trying to add them into groups of misfits, really. Whereas a lot of the time, obviously in zoos, hopefully you've got a nice stable family group. So
Yes,
very,
absolutely.
very different. But then obviously in the zoos, you get the opportunity to kind of do more of the captive breeding programs, and that's very different. So yeah, lots of variety, lots of experience.
So not necessarily then having been a bear-centric person, what is one fact or kind of little snippet about Asiatic black bears that when you first read it or experienced it, it kind of was like, oh, wow, these are an incredible species.
Um, it's not really a fact. It's just something that I like kind of learned in my first couple of months here at the sanctuary. Like, obviously, before I came out here, I read as much as I could about the bears and the industry, and I tried to prepare myself kind of mentally and emotionally for what it was going to be like. And their resilience has shocked me. When you really learn what kind of lives they've led for 20 years, what horrendous bile extraction processes they've endured. And then on top of that, the now consequential health conditions that have come with that life. There's not many species that could survive in those conditions for that long. And then when on my first rescue, when the first rescue was 2 or 3 weeks after I first started, we got 9 bears in, which was the biggest ever rescue Fort Paws had ever done. The condition these bears came in really kind of shocked me. And I thought, oh God, like these animals aren't going to survive, let alone thrive. And they completely blew me away. These guys are survivors. They bounce back. Like you wouldn't think when they come in that you can't even imagine them going out into big outside enclosures and climbing trees and digging their own dens and socializing with the bears. And these guys, yeah, I think the main thing about Asiatic black bears is they're just incredibly resilient animals, and yeah, they're survivors.
That's just truly inspiring to hear. And yeah, thank you for sharing. So what obviously, like you say, it wasn't necessarily a career plan and you prepared yourself mentally and emotionally, but what was your first experience with an Asiatic black bear?
It was rather underwhelming, to be honest. I actually arrived out here in Vietnam in January, and although the bears don't hibernate in Vietnam, they do slow down, become less active, decrease appetite. So obviously, I was itching to meet them. I was like, "Oh my God, I'm going to meet the bears! I'm going to meet the bears!" And we went into one of the bear houses, and most of them didn't even didn't even look up, fast asleep in straw nests or in their hammocks. Like kind of we were calling their names, like, "Are you gonna wake up for me?" And they were like, "No." And it was just so different. Like I was like, I have worked so hard to come out and to meet you guys, and you're not even looking at me. And I'd come straight from being a primate keeper for 5 years, and obviously primates is so high energy. You go into a primate house and it's everyone's bouncing everywhere. There's noise, there's people bickering, and just so much energy and so much activity going on. And then to go from that to just sleeping bears, and they slept for another 2 months or so. And I was thinking, God, these guys are really like, don't do much. But then the warmer weather came in, and I got to see their cheeky side, and they became more active again. So yeah,
Fantastic.
a little bit underwhelming.
So, kind of off the back of them having a cheeky side, do you have any fun, light-hearted stories from your time around Asiatic black bears, considering that, they are nicknamed, the saddest bear in the world, and that's obviously a human emotion that we're putting onto them. But yeah, what fun, light-hearted side do they have?
Um, yeah, I mean, obviously our old guys they do like the easy, slow life. But as I said, we do take on cubs from the illegal wildlife trade. I had to hand rear two cubs that came in last May, two sisters. M came in at 2.4 kilograms and Bay was a little bit bigger at 3.2 kilograms. And yeah, they were so much fun. Obviously, I would much rather they had never been poached from the wild and that they were in the wild with mum and that they would never have come across a human. That wasn't to be for them. But it was still a privilege kind of hand rearing them. They were just little cannonballs with claws, basically. You don't understand how dense a bear is until you held a baby one and it's like a little bowling ball. I'm like, they're so heavy and they're just so boisterous and they really just, yeah, just they were so much fun. They just destroyed everything. They just climbed everything and it was even cuter because Bay was really well developed compared to her sister. I think M must have been the little runt of the litter. Her head was too big for her body still, so her head was really head heavy. So everything she would like try and climb, she just then go like topple off head first. So I spent like 2 months trying to catch this baby bear. And if she wasn't toppling off herself, then her sister was just honestly was just out to get her, just pushing her off everything. And it's kind of still the same now. They're about a year and a half now. And they're in one of the bear houses with an adult outside enclosure, not the little cub nursery anymore. But they've not really changed. Em's still quite quiet and always lets Bay lead. And Bay is still the absolute hurricane that she was when she came in at 3 months old. Like, so, yeah, although they started out with a sad story, obviously being poached, like they were just so much fun. And I'll never forget the experience.
Would you say then that obviously because it's hard in this industry to not get attached to the animals, and we don't not want to get attached to them, but would you say that Bay and M for you are the two that you've got the most particular attachment with?
Um, I think not.
I won't tell them.
I do love them. I love them all. It's really hard to choose a favorite. The vets always say when I take them round, like it's an in joke because every bear is Charlie's favorite. Someone's like, "You got to be good with this one because this one's my favorite," and they're like, "Charlie, every bear is your favorite." I'm like, I know, but my favorite bear actually was T. She came in the 9 bear rescue last February, and I've never seen anything like it. She was one of the worst bears in terms of condition that we've ever rescued. She came in at 175 kilograms, morbidly obese. This bear should have been 100 kilograms, so she's nearly double the weight. She was missing her front left paw, so she's now disabled and morbidly obese. Just from looking at her, you could see she had partial alopecia, she had sarcopenia. Her first health check revealed she had bacterial cholecystitis, moderate liver disease, osteoarthritis in the lumbar spine, dental disease, you name it. There's everything wrong with this poor bear. She did have a 2005 microchip, but we suspect she was much older than that as well. She was a very old lady. And when the bears come in, obviously they're stressed. They've had a terrible life anyway, but they're stressed from the journey. So a lot of them are stereotyping. They're showing aggressive behaviors towards us. And then they will settle down with time when they learn their routine and they realize that actually they get a lot of honey here. So it's not a bad place to be after all. But T didn't show any kind of signs like that. She was just lethargic and inactive and she just wouldn't move in front of us. She wouldn't even eat in front of us. We'd put food in, she wouldn't touch it, and then we'd come back later and it was gone. So we moved her to a separate quarantine. We have like a big quarantine building. We were quarantining all 9 bears in there, but we thought with all the activity, we moved her to a separate place, and we made it just so me and the animal manager would work with her rather than lots of new faces. And slowly but surely over the year, she came out of her shell, and we moved her to a bear house, and we started her off. Her rehabilitation took such a long time, but like we started off in a small paddock and then built up to a larger paddock. We managed to integrate her with 4 other female bears, which we never thought we'd be able to do. The weight just kind of started to just come off her. She lost a lot of weight. She must have been feeling much better. She would only eat pumpkin at the beginning for some reason, pumpkin and chicken, and then it took me months and months of just every like feeding her chicken and then slipping in a piece of apple. And at first she just spit it out, or a piece of banana. But one day she swallowed it and she was like, "Oh, I quite like that." I was like, "Yes, it's nice. You
More of that,
something other
please.
than chicken and pumpkin." And she was just, honestly, she was just the sweetest bear I've ever known. She was just so good natured considering everything. And she had this kind of, once she'd come out of her shell, she really had quite the personality. And like she has like her own kind of method to kind of dealing with new challenges. Like a lot of bears are obviously frightened or flighty or aggressive or confident when we give them new challenges. T would basically just kind of, we'd put a new bear in with her, and she just put her nose to the ground and just bumble in head first, like completely like inoffensively. And a lot of the other bears quite liked her actually, because I think they did find her very inoffensive. Or we'd let her out into a new enclosure and she wouldn't kind of be frightened. She'd just put her nose down, just bumble off, and we'd be like, "Oh, I hope she finds her way back." And she always did. Yeah, she was a really special bear, and sadly, like multiple health conditions all caught up with her in the end. So she's not with us anymore, but I literally think about her every day. Like, she really puts your problems in perspective, like if she can cope with all that and go from being a shut down bear that wouldn't even look at us to one of the most popular bears in the sanctuary in such a short amount of time, it was just amazing. So T does beat M and Bay just.
And I get that, and it is obviously incredibly fulfilling knowing that for at least part of her life, I'm sure you are so overwhelmed that she did have that shell that she come out of, and obviously it's a testament to the dedication of animal keepers and sanctuary workers around the world, that of course the animals come first and foremost all the time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, quite a common question we always ask is, so how long does it take to rehabilitate a bear? And the answer is it's for the rest of their lives. Like it is never finished. You can't undo 20 years ever. Even the guys that are young bears who were confiscated illegally, they might have only had a year or so in a cage, but the damage is done and the rehabilitation process is never over. And they just keep challenging us, and we just keep trying to manage them as best we can and cater for all their individual needs and quirks.
So not then that there's a such thing as a typical day in this kind of sector, but what does, for lack of a better word, a typical day look like for you?
Like you said, every animal keeper knows every day is different. On a routine day, I'm usually working one of the bear houses. I like to work alongside the keepers as much as possible, and obviously work with the bears as much as possible, because that's how you get to know them the best, and that's how you can pick up on any problems quicker. But if we have new rescues in, then I'll work the quarantine building, and obviously I only work quarantine until the bears are cleared. If we've got cubs, then I'm hand rearing most of the time. And again, I wouldn't go to one of the bear houses if I'm working cubs. Doing any integrations, obviously, as I said, we're always rescuing new bears and trying to get them into groups or pairs if we can, and if they would like. Some bears don't, so they can lead a solitary life if that's what they would prefer. We have usually one health check a week, at least with the vets. So often I'm taking on vet nursing duties, and I'm involved in the health check. And then I spend a lot of time. We've got a keeper development program here, so I'm either lecturing or running seminars with my bear caretaker team, just to try and like increase their knowledge about the bears and animal welfare and husbandry, because these guys obviously are all just kind of local people that were hired 5 years ago to do this job. We are really in the middle of nowhere, so they're absolutely amazing, really dedicated, and it's just really great to try and develop them and kind of turn this into a career for them. It's not just a job, and we've got so many passionate people, and they're so ambitious. It's really nice to see.
No, it does sound great. That obviously there is that ambition for people out there to have that as a career, because I'm obviously not speaking from experience, but it's easy to assume that maybe because human standards aren't always the highest, or definitely aren't the highest out there, that pursuing a career to increase the standards of animal welfare is not certainly something that's pushed out there.
No, definitely not. And, you know, we are really in the middle of nowhere. We're just in kind of farming land. So everybody is just a farmer, really. And that was fantastic, really, for us, because if you're a farmer and you've got practical skills, that's already half the battle. Our bear caretakers can build anything, grow anything. Yeah, really physically strong, really physically fit. So that's half the battle already. And then it was just basically teaching them about bears and yeah, basically specializing from kind of cows and goats to bears instead. And I think at first what maybe started out as just a job, as for many of them is now kind of like they're here for life and this is their career and they wouldn't ever do anything differently.
Amazing. That is great for them, and yeah, it's great for you guys as well. What a resource to have. So then, were there any influences on you and you in your career path? Any people or any actions that have kind of helped influence you?
Um, I think my dad was probably was my initial influence. He is a huge animal lover, so he like indulged me. So obviously, I was asking for every pet possible. So I had dogs, cats, guinea pigs, rats, hamsters, rabbits, and he was the guy who kind of taught me like what responsibility was and what how you look after an animal. And that's I'm sure that's how many of us started off. You know, looking after our hamsters and rabbits at home when we're 5 and 6 years old. And then we build up to giraffe and bears and monkeys when we're adults. Um, and yeah, he kind of just endorsed my passion and took me to the local riding stables every Saturday without fail for 9 years, mucking out horses and riding. And that's a very expensive hobby to have, so I'm really grateful he let me do that. I think he would have much preferred if I just stuck with gymnastics because you only have to buy a leotard for that and not a horse. But um, and then the second person that kind of got me to where I am today was Penny from Chester Zoo. We used to run the internship program, and yeah, she kind of gave me that first opportunity to kind of get my foot in the door. And to be honest, since then we've remained friends over the last decade. She's such a like good friend and mentor, and she's such an inspiration. Like there is nothing too much like too difficult that she won't do for an animal. Her doors is always open, and it's not just for animals; it's for people as well. And I'm sure, again, hopefully, anyone listening here who've been through the internships at Chester Zoo will probably know Penny and know that she really does support her interns and does her best to get them into paid employment afterwards. And kind of point them in the direction because she knows how difficult it is in this industry to get that first step in the door.
Yeah, that is amazing, and I think most zookeepers do because it's a small industry, isn't it? Everyone knows everyone in the UK zoo scene. Most people know someone that's been through the Chester internship program, and I myself applied for a Chester internship, so I have been in contact with Penny, not as much as I would have liked. I wasn't successful in getting it, and in fact, I was lucky to get an interview because I sent my application in after the interview had dated or the application date had closed. So she was very nice just to give me an interview. So yeah, I can see why you are fond of Penny, and it's great that you still have that connection with her today. And on the flip side of that, then obviously moving out to a different area of the world, I can assume what your answer might be to this, but have there been any hurdles in your career?
Yeah, again, I think a lot of people in the UK zoo industry will kind of empathize with me, maybe not, but I think I found it quite difficult, particularly in my 20s, kind of how slow progression can be and what can feel in our industry. Have a lot of friends in other professions and they were getting promotions and they were managers and they were getting bonuses and they were and I was just like, how are they climbing up the career ladder so quickly? And I'm just don't feel like I'm getting anywhere. And then you realize actually it's the same for most of us, I think. Obviously, a few lucky people get that break quite early on in their career. But, I did put in 10 years before I kind of started to get into the more senior positions. So yeah, I'm a very ambitious and competitive person, so that got me down quite a bit. I'm happy to admit that. Sometimes it did feel like you were constantly being told no, and there was always somebody more experienced than you. But I'm really happy I stuck with it. 'Cause I know a lot of people can be forced out of the industry because they need to have some career progression or get better wages. But yeah, I'm really happy I stuck with it because I'm here where I am today now because of it.
No, I'm sure that will certainly resonate with a lot of the community. So yeah, don't feel like you're alone, and certainly probably plenty of other people are feeling the same way. So it might be nice for them just to hear that. What advice would you give to someone who is looking to pursue a career in conservation, but specifically with those that are maybe looking to move overseas?
Um, my advice would be do as much research as you can if you're going to move abroad. Again, like I thought I'd prepared myself mentally. I kind of thought, well, I I love being out in the countryside, and I don't see my friends that often because I live quite far from home in the UK. But it is very different being out in the rural countryside of Vietnam to the rural countryside of the UK. There really isn't a Tesco just down the road. My nearest supermarket is a 2-hour round trip, and that's very basic stuff. If I want really good food, I've got to do a 6-hour round trip to Hanoi. So it's a lot of work just to fill the cupboards. And but I don't want to put people off. I think just do your research, pick what you think you can mentally handle. Like, don't set yourself up to fail. I spoke a lot to my current animal manager before I came out here. She answered all my questions. She prepared me as much as possible before I moved out here, so that I did know what I was going to get into. So I wasn't too shocked. But I would definitely recommend people do it because I think it does build you up as a person. It gives you kind of a whole different perspective and experience of life. I've developed skills out here that I don't think I would ever have developed in a UK collection, because we face very different problems out here to what you have in the UK. Like, for instance, the language barrier. I'm probably the best communicator ever here now. I have a translator, but so much stuff gets lost in translation out here. So yeah, we have very different kind of challenges, and I definitely have learned a lot, and I'll never forget it. And I just think I would encourage everybody to experience it, even if you just want to do 6 months to a year, that's fine, and then head home. Some people might come out here and find that that's it. They want to stay out somewhere forever, but definitely worth doing.
Fantastic. And yeah, it's great that, there is something for everyone in doing this kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. And you can't beat working with like the bears. So you don't really get to work with 46 Asiatic black bears anywhere else but in Asia. So
Yeah, definitely. So great. Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that knowledge. I hope that the listeners will find something in all of that to kind of resonate and attach on, and just kind of give them a bit of insight as to where they can go. So we're just gonna, the last bit before we finish up our conversation today, just have a little bit of fun and make it a bit more lighthearted, because it is obviously a sad topic at times, conservation in general. So yeah, we just want to leave everyone on a bit of a happy note. So this is more of just a personality fit. 1 to 5 dream species that you'd love to see in the wild.
obviously Asiatic black bears, probably not in Vietnam, maybe somewhere else. My favorite all-time species are killer whales, so I would love to see them in the wild. Geladas. Uh, I definitely want to see the cat langas while I'm here because there are only 60 to 70 left. So I think it's see them now or see them never. And giraffe.
Incredible. I mean, it's hard just to limit it to 5, but you did very well, and yeah, all very very cool species. So I hope you get to see all 5 of those at some point. One country, I mean, you might already be doing it, but one country or continent that you'd love to call home.
I'm going to say the UK because I've not been home for nearly a year now, so I'm feeling pretty homesick. So yeah, I think at the moment I'm definitely ready for a UK summer. It's far too hot out here, so I'm sure you guys aren't enjoying it, but I'm definitely looking forward to cooler temperatures and some more rain.
Fair enough. If there was one species, obviously we are as a collective aware of what the effects of humans can do on native biodiversity, but if there was one species from around the world that you could have native to Vietnam, as that's where you are at the moment, without any negative effects on the ecosystem, what would you love that to be?
I would definitely choose Siamang because I think there would be nothing better than waking up to them singing in your garden every morning.
Yeah, you wouldn't get bored of that sound, definitely.
No.
If you could be an animal, what would it be and why?
I would be my cat because he has the best life. He's spoilt and yeah, has it really easy living with me. So I think I would trade places with him.
And then you could come and just get your 2 pence in on a podcast, which is absolutely
exactly.
more than welcome.
He's next door now because he's like, it's dinner time and you're late. I'm like, it.
Oh, I apologise. And so obviously you talked about, having to do a 2-hour round trip or a 6-hour round trip if you want really good food. Is there any particular food that represents the region that you enjoy?
In Vietnam?
Yeah.
No. I don't really like the food. I'm much happier with chips and gravy from the chippy. We have no chippies.
Right, so you'll have to fill up on that fix as and when you do make it back to the UK for a summer.
Yeah.
Great. So that, actually, one last one. When you're not working at the sanctuary on your days off, what do you do to stay busy?
I walk my dogs. Easier said than done. Obviously, we're dodging electrical storms at the minute and really high temperatures. So I'm usually up at dawn or dusk, taking them out around work. And if not, then during the day, I'll head to Tam Kok, which is about an hour away. It's a tourist hotspot, and they've got a great kind of travelers bar there with a swimming pool and a great cocktail menu. So that's where I'll be on my days off.
Sounds like a great way to unwind. Thank you to Charlie for appearing on the podcast. Be sure to follow the work of Bear Sanctuary Ninh Binh and Four Paws on Instagram. I hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Conservationists Assembled podcast. Please follow us on Instagram at Conservationists Assembled Pod. I'd also appreciate if you could subscribe and give a 5-star rating wherever you get your podcasts, and share the podcast with family, friends and colleagues. This will help get the word out and support the Conservationists Assembled community. There is a lot more great conservation-based content yet to come. Most importantly, thank you for listening, and be sure to listen out for our next episode coming soon.